proceed to your post assignments. All units proceed to your post assignments.
Yeah, baby. It's the last episode of Ask the Inspector before the inspector heads to Russia for his big book tour. And there he is getting in some last-minute cuddles with Maverick.
Maverick's going to miss me. I'll miss Maverick. Say hello, Maverick.
They say animals can sense these things. He can sense you're about ready to head out, you think?
Yeah, he watched us pack, and so he's all nervous. He's like, what's going on? What's going on? Why are you leaving me? Well, buddy, It's because I don't like you.
All right. Well, feel free to comfort him.
I'll let Maverick go do his security stuff.
All right. Scott's new article just published today in Substack is called What Would Daniel Ellsberg Do? This is Daniel Ellsberg week. Many of us who have been inspired by him are participating in one way or another. This is a whole week-long tribute. He's dying of pancreatic cancer, and sort of spontaneously, a lot of folks realized, well, why not pay tribute to him while he's still alive? And that's the way it should be done. And you mentioned the time that we went to his house in this article, which is quite a memory for me. I remember we did an event in Oakland, and then afterwards we went to his house and hung out and drank and talked till the wee hours. But you left out, he took us out to dinner too before the event. Remember, he took a bunch of us out to dinner at a front.
No, I know. I was constrained by time, so I had to.
Okay.
I couldn't get. This was the lightning round version of an article, not the loquacious article.
I got it.
Just because before you go off on a trip, you know how a week out you're like, I got plenty of time. 4 days out, I still got plenty of time. 2 days out, I think I have plenty of time. 1 day out, I don't have any time left. It's all gone. And I had budgeted things, and I had a conference call this morning for my paying job that was supposed to be 2 hours. It turned into 5 hours.
Ooh.
And it literally just all the time that I set aside today, carefully budgeted, went, and the schedule went to hell in a handbasket. And so, I mean,
well, I don't mean to give you flack. It's just that, the point here is to say how nicely he treated us. So
he treated us like champs, but it was, I cut it out. I had written something, but I just think that the way he and his wife talked to each other, the stories they told, just showed a level of humanity and intimacy that, that just exposed even more how wonderful this guy is. He's not just courageous. He's not just intelligent. He's a good human being. He's just a good guy.
Yeah. Very sweet guy. Very sweet. And we talked on a previous episode about how he stood by you when you went off to your all expense paid vacation.
To Pennsylvania. Yeah.
So anything you want to say about the article that might drive people to it and read it at our Substack, which is at scottritterextra.com?
Well, I mean, I asked the question, what would Dan Ellsberg do? And we've asked that it's a question that was asked before I went to Baghdad to address the Iraqi parliament in an effort to stop the war. And, I think we know what Dan Ellsberg would have done. He would have come with me. He would have, had that been offered, he would have been there, because that's what he believes in. He believes in disarmament. He believes in preventing wars. We know that Dan Ellsberg, when told, aren't you afraid to go into prison about leaking the Pentagon Papers, he famously said, wouldn't you go to prison to stop this war? There it is, to help end this war. And so I asked the question about what I'm getting ready to do, which is to go off into the great unknown in an effort to trigger change, to begin a process of breaking down walls of fear-based or ignorance-based fear, and hopefully get a dialogue going, and for the goal of preventing a nuclear war. And then the question is, what would Dan Ellsberg do? And I know darn well what he would do. Dan Ellsberg was healthy and able to travel. He'd be right there with me going off to do it, because that's the kind of guy he is. So I like to believe that he is with me. That in many ways this trip is motivated by, Dan Ellsberg's spirit, by the precedent he has set, and by his presence. As you said, Jeff, we spent some quality time with Dan Ellsberg, and if that doesn't rub off on you, if that doesn't become part of you, if that doesn't get imbued in you, nothing will. And so I feel like Dan Ellsberg is with me, and he's coming with me on this trip.
All right. He would help you find your inner Van Cliburn, who's the other. Those are probably the two key sources of inspiration, one being Daniel Ellsberg, the other being Van Cliburn, right?
Yeah, it was weird because, I knew who Van Cliburn was. Who didn't? In the 1970s, you couldn't turn on TV, or in the 80s, and get they're selling Van Cliburn plays the Beatles, Van Cliburn plays this. I'm not picking on Van Cliburn, but he was a piano player who was making a living playing piano and selling records. But that's all I knew him of. I didn't know anything about it. And it took Anatoly Antonov, the Russian ambassador, to educate me on Van Cliburn and begin the process of doing it. As soon as I did it, I said, wow, that's what everybody should be trying to do. Going over there and, it'd be cool to be able to get that kind of reception.
Yeah, this is classical music, and it looks like he's getting the kind of response that rock stars get here in the U.S., right?
Well, the Russians are pretty cultured people, and
more than we are, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
We have classical concerts here too, but it looks like pandemonium there, actually. Not just sitting there polite applause, with their hands folded.
Well, the one of the reasons why is that because he's an American.
Yeah,
in 1958, Americans didn't travel to Russia. That just it didn't happen. And we know when we talk to Tim Kirby, we know Kevin Michelizzi, we know some other people who are Americans living in Russia, but Americans don't travel to Russia nowadays. They just don't. It's not done. So in many ways, this journey is going to be in the footsteps of Van Cliburn. I only hope that it resonates the way that his did, both in Russia, but also in the United States. I'm not asking for a ticker tape parade, and I doubt that I'd get one. But
well, there he is meeting Khrushchev. Is it just me, or does he look a little like Eisenhower in that photo? Maybe it's just me.
It's just you. That looks like an older Eisenhower, yeah. But except Eisenhower never had the red star. But
well, maybe you'll meet numero uno on this trip.
Well,
that's what everybody's
saying. What the stars allow, the stars allow. I'm going over there to have whatever this journey offers me, I will take and enjoy it and absorb it and try to project it back. Again, this isn't just for my edification. Trust me, I'm not going to lie, Jeff. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm a Russian studies guy. I love Russian history. I'm going to see places I've never seen before, things I've only read about, and I'm going to meet just great people. I'm really looking forward to going back to Votkensk and meeting the old Department 162 people and being able to show my daughter where Daddy and Mommy used to work. This is where we met, that kind of thing. But so trust me, I'm very selfish on this one. I know what I'm getting ready to get into.
There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you having a good time.
Right, but I also understand that this is bigger than that. This is about sharing ideas with Russians. It's about sharing ideas with Americans. This is a journey that I hope everybody will accompany me on. I'll do my best to get feedback through you.
We should tell our fans who now become accustomed to finding us here every Friday night that we won't be doing Ask the Inspector necessarily at this time and day, and probably not, but we're going to try to do some podcasts, but you just won't know too much in advance the exact day and time. But while you're gone, this time slot will be occupied by a brand new show we're premiering next Friday night at this time. So if you're used to tuning in here and you want to see some good content, you can still do that. Strange Bedfellows with Laurie Spencer and Tyler McConnell. It's a show that brings together thought leaders from all sides of the political spectrum to find points of agreement and foster cooperation between political camps. And we're going to have them just babysit this time slot. And then when you come back, we'll resume and we'll find a different time slot for
I
them.
don't know. It sounds to me like I've been fired.
You feel
this is sort of like, Tucker Carlson showing up at work at Fox News. They're going, yeah, no, you're not. You don't have that time slot anymore.
Thank you for your service. And we're now going to continue.
Scott, I'll be in Russia trying to connect. Hey, Jeff, I really want to do a podcast. Scott, who?
Sorry, bad internet. Bad internet.
Bad internet. That's right.
All right, let's get to the questions from our beloved audience for the final time before Scott leaves for Russia. And the first question comes from Russia. Dennis in St. Petersburg. Seems that you consider only nuclear weapons while talking about arms control. Don't you think that a treaty must be integral and include biological weapons also, assuming 300 plus U.S. biological labs all over the world?
I mean, I understand the question. I understand why you're asking the question, and it makes sense. But no, from a negotiating standpoint, a compliance verification standpoint, these are two completely different problem sets, and there's no way you could blend the two treaties. It makes no sense. I think you need separate treaties. You need a nuclear disarmament treaty with specific verification regimes put in place to ensure compliance, and you also need what happened with the biological is they did an international treaty, the Biological Toxin and Weapons Convention, that's supposed to get rid of all this stuff. So there's not a bilateral treaty between the United States and Russia. Maybe Russia needs to insist on that. But then what do you do with a treaty that everybody signed and under, it's been, it's part of the United Nations system now. Therefore, it's international law. It's supposed to be binding. But we saw the United States just violate it, and it has horrible, poor compliance verification measures. And another problem with biological is that there's a lot of dual purpose activities in there. Major pharmaceutical companies. One of the reasons why the Biological Toxic Weapons Convention isn't that strong is pharmaceutical companies say, we're not letting inspectors in here. You don't get to come in here. We're not giving away our trade secrets. And because they're private companies, it's hard to do a treaty that forces them to do something like that. So it's just a completely different problem set. But Dennis brings up a good point. Given the abysmal record of the United States when it comes to these to these biolabs the United States has put in, and the evidence that Russia has accumulated, I do think that we being the world needs to take another look at how we're doing biological weapons, arms control and compliance, et cetera, because clearly the United States was just doing its own thing with little regard for international law. And this is problematic. So, but here's the hard part. Where are you going to do it? In the United Nations? That the institution that the United States delayed issuing Lavrov his visa to the last second, an institution where the United States is conspiring to get Russia kicked off the Security Council. I mean, the United Nations is fundamentally broke, which is why I think the way to go forward is for Russia and the United States to have a bilateral treaty, because that's the only way Russia is ever going to be able to trust the United States is through a bilateral treaty that goes beyond the Biological Toxin Weapons Convention and gives Russians the ability to, do the kind of intrusive on-site inspection. Remember, it's reciprocal. So the Russians, what you demand, you have to give. And so the Russians may also put up some red flags saying, well, we're not going to do that. But at least the Russians would be able to better define a level of compliance verification that would at least give them confidence that the United States isn't continuing down the path that they obviously were when they were putting these biological labs in Ukraine and elsewhere.
All right. So it was a good, fair question, but the answer is no. Beef Webster somewhere on Earth wants to know the following. Can the inspector comment on the leak claiming the U.S. considered assassinating Wagner commanders in Africa? If such actions were to take place, what would stop Wagner from attacking U.S. forces across Africa?
Live by the sword, die by the sword. I mean, that's one of the problems with escalation of this nature. The United States, first of all, we killed Qasem Soleimani, a Ukrainian, an Iranian government official. I mean, one of the major government officials. We assassinated him in Baghdad. So, now that we've labeled Wagner as a criminal enterprise, these are criminals, and so, there's little to stop the United States from doing it, except the concerns about retaliation, and that might be the best deterrence. I think Wagner is starting to get a much deserved reputation for being a serious organization, a professional organization. But it's also Russian. So it's not just Wagner. If you attack Wagner in Africa and Wagner's there doing the bidding of the Russian government, you're attacking Russia, which means you're opening yourself up to that kind of retaliation. The good news is that Russia is very good at escalation management, and they don't take the bait. And so, who knows what the future is going to. Hopefully, there will be people in Washington, D.C. that recognize that beginning the process of assassinating military commanders is stupid. And I have to tell you, if I was a defense attaché in Africa or anywhere in the world, or if I were military forces deployed into Africa, I'd be telling them, don't even think about it, guys, because it's not your neck on the line. It's ours. We're out here in Africa now, and you're setting us up to get killed as well. It's just stupidity.
Well, the question was actually worded rather vaguely. It was considered. There's a lot of people involved in the decision-making process. Do you know anything specific about to what extent it was considered, how close it came? I mean, very often people who are involved in the process, there may be individuals who have crazy ideas, and then it gets knocked down.
I'm answering hypothetically because I'm responding to the question. I don't have any insight into this whatsoever. I haven't read the article. I don't know anything. First time I heard about it was the question. So I'm just riffing off the question.
Okay. So the next question is from some other Beto in Puerto Rico, or as we say in Espanol, Puerto Rico. During the first half of the 20th century, humanity suffered through two devastating world wars and wars between Russia and Japan, Japan and China, the 1918 US and UK invasion of Russia, etc. Since then, we've seen countless asymmetric and proxy wars, but not one direct hot conflict between major military peers. Should we thank nuclear weapons for that?
I mean, it's a good question.
It is.
But I reject the premise. How can you thank that which can kill everything? I mean, no, because that legitimizes nuclear weapons, and we can't legitimize nuclear weapons. One would have thought that after experiencing the Second World War and the level of violence that took place without nuclear weapons, excusing for a moment Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that we would have realized that major total war between major powers is just the ultimate expression of stupidity. But it is what it is. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think we can acknowledge that if Russia didn't have a nuclear deterrent, that NATO would be involved in the Ukrainian conflict directly. That the only thing that keeps NATO out of Ukraine is Russia's nuclear deterrent. I think we can say that. And if you're a Russian, you're probably saying, thank God we have nuclear weapons, which makes, of course, my task and others who promote disarmament extraordinarily hard. How do you argue against that? Hey, guys, congratulations. You kept NATO out of Ukraine because you have a nuclear deterrent. Oh, by the way, I'm on a book tour promoting nuclear disarmament. I mean, this is going to be a hard sell. But again, I don't think anybody at this point in time is promoting nuclear disarmament in a vacuum, meaning no one could have any credibility to go to Russia and say, "Hey, get rid of all your nuclear weapons right now because it's the right thing to do." They're going to say, "No, it's not." But what we can say is you need to recapture arms control. You need to keep the current processes alive and refine them, make them better while we repair relations and create confidence building measures, etc., that will de-emphasize nuclear weapons and the need for nuclear weapons and lead to a point where we can begin, once again, nuclear reductions with a goal to getting to zero. Whether we'll be able to ever get to zero, I don't know. But I would like a situation where we don't have to wake up every morning worrying about whether or not some itchy trigger finger with a mistake is going to fire nukes and kill us all. That's where I'd like to get. There's to get there is a big journey, but journeys begin with the first step. And that's what we're going to be trying to do here, is begin the first step of creating the conditions where people will consider the possibility, even if it's heavily caveated, meaning that we'll consider it, but X, Y, and Z have to happen. At least now we know what we have to do, make X, Y, and Z happen so they can consider it. But right now it's not happening. Arms control is dying. Nuclear weapons are becoming, more and more attractive. I mean, not attractive in terms of people like it, but when you have Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia, doing a conference saying, the Russian leaders have to have a steady hand over these weapons. And people need to know that when the time comes, when we have to use these weapons, that hand will do its job without any hesitation. That scared the crap out of me. I mean, it's a true statement, but it's just like, why are we talking about this, guys? Why are we talking about? Why does he feel the need to say this? Because the Russian nuclear doctrine says if conventional force is assembled that threatens the existential survival of Russia, Russia will use all the weapons necessary, including their nuclear weapons, to terminate that threat. And right now you have U.S. Congress passing a law called the Victory in Ukraine resolution that says it's U.S. policy for Ukraine to seize the Crimea. That's Russia. That's like Russia saying, hey, it's Russian policy to allow the Mexicans to take Texas. You think America's going to sit there and go, yeah, that's all right. No big deal. No, we'd say, hell no, we'll nuke you. So we're deliberately creating an environment that's provoking Russia to even have to contemplate the conditions under which that nuclear weapons could be used. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be moving in the exact opposite direction.
It occurs to me that the argument that this questioner made might very well be Putin's position. So if you were to have that hypothetical meeting with him, would you be shocked if that's what he said to you?
Well, I doubt that Vladimir Putin would ever have a discussion about strategic nuclear deterrent. I mean, not with me, not with anybody. I mean, unless it's serious. I mean, at this point in time, we're talking about beginning a process of breaking down obstacles towards the American people and the Russian people getting to talk to one another. That has to happen. The Russians, one of the reasons why the Russians pulled out of, or at least froze New START treaty is the United States has a policy of, achieving the strategic defeat of Russia. And the Russians are like, well, then arms control is dead because we can't let you come and inspect our facilities, our strategic weapons, while you're seeking to achieve the strategic defeat of Russia. And so that's big boy stuff. That's adult stuff. And having a casual conversation with, no matter how well-meaning I am, no matter how well-informed I am, I'm not a policymaker. I don't make policy in the United States. I just don't see that. I think
so if the meeting
if I ever could meet him, I think it would be, how you doing? How's the weather?
You talk about Van Cliburn, maybe.
We could talk about Van Cliburn, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, look.
Well, let us know. Let us know.
Go back to that photo. What American man, besides me, because I'm happily married, but what American man? I mean, look at those girls. Look how they're looking at him. I mean, he could be John Lennon. He could be Paul McCartney. He could be Ringo Starr, George Harrison. I mean, that's rock and roll, baby. But he's a classic pianist.
He's probably gay anyway, so I don't want to break their hearts.
Come on, Jeff. Why would you say that?
He seemed like, I'm not saying it like it's a bad thing, but he seemed like he might be gay. I've heard him talk.
Okay, I don't know.
All right,
Who
it's
cares?
fine.
He plays a
Yeah.
good piano.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't want to break their hearts. Also, too, let them think there's a chance. All right. The next question comes from Raymond O. in Bedfordshire, England. Will Bakhmut be the toughest battle of the war, or are there fiercer ones to come? Have we reached the turning point yet?
Well, I mean, we won't be able to determine is this the turning point until it's all over. Those are conclusions that are reached once it's done. Then you look at the totality of the conflict and you say, oh, that was the turning point. So it's a little premature right now to say definitively that Bakhmut is the turning point. It's a tough battle. There hasn't been any battle tougher than Bakhmut. I mean, Mariupol was tough, but not like Bakhmut. And it has broken the back of the Ukrainian army. I don't see how the Ukrainians can have another battle like Bakhmut. They've burned up their resources. They've eaten up their manpower. They've eaten up their ammunition. And when I say it's broke the back of the Ukrainian army, that means just that. I mean, going forward, once Bakhmut falls, they're largely crippled. I mean, their air defense is gone. They don't have artillery. The majority of their qualified troops have been killed, captured, or wounded. The troops that they have are poorly trained. Not prepared to do combined arms maneuver warfare on a meaningful scale. So, and the other thing you have to remember is that Bakhmut has been turned into this beehive, or I guess that's not the right anthill. I don't know, but it's a fortress that they've been digging into for 8, 9, 10 years now. So there's no other place in Ukraine that has had this level of preparation, this with the ability to defend with the tenacity that they have. Anything else after this won't, the Russians won't face as difficult a fight. Plus, the Ukrainians just won't be as good. And the Russians are accruing advantages. They're able right now to use their air power with almost no pushback from the Ukrainians. They have new weapons. These precision-guided glide bombs are slaughtering the Ukrainians as they seek to assemble their forces. So, no, I don't think there's going to be a battle going forward that's going to be as tough as Bakhmut, but we'll see. Who knows? Stalingrad was considered a turning point in the Second World War. That was fought in the 1942, 1943. War didn't end until May 1945. So there's a lot of fighting left. Even if Russia has the advantage and they've turned the corner, there's still a lot of fighting left. But I think history will show that this is probably the turning point, but it's hard to make that definitive conclusion until we know everything.
Craig Z in Long Island. Do you have any information behind the cause of the explosion in Belgorod? I have close relationships with people there and was there myself last August.
Well, I did receive a phone call. They wanted to know about a guy from Long Island that was there last August and was snooping around. They said, "Do you think he could?" I don't know. I'm joking, Craig. I don't have any information about the explosion in Belgrade. I apologize.
Is he talking about? I thought that Russia admitted that they, by mistake.
Well, I mean, if he's talking about that, yeah, the MiG, I think the Su-34 actually dropped a Fab 500 bomb. Is that the explosion you're talking about?
Oh, yeah, you might be talking about a different one. I don't know.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, Belgorod tends to blow up now and then because the Ukrainians fire missiles, fire drones. Russians bomb their own city. There's a number of reasons why Belgorod goes boom.
Okay. Michael from Toronto, we are now seeing footage of protests by Ukrainian citizens against government mobilization in Ukraine. The citizens are finally seeing what's happening to their sons and fathers, especially in the Bakhmut Soledar complex. Does the dubious Zelensky have any shot of surviving this war? Will his military and citizens finally turn on him?
Well, I don't wish harm on Zelensky, but I personally believe that the more he tries to hold on to power, the more certain his demise is, and that if he doesn't step down relatively soon, I think that he's not long for this earth. I think he will be taken out either by the military, by some sort of new Maidan. His popularity is plummeting. The level of corruption is becoming apparent to everybody in Ukraine. Resentment's building up, and people, just look back at 1917, and when the Russian army just basically said, "We're done." On the front, they put that. They turned. They just left, and they marched to St. Petersburg. They marched to Moscow, and the Tsar was gone. And I honestly believe that the way this war is going, and the fact that the majority of the regular troops have been killed, captured, or wounded, that these territorials are waking up to the fact that this is just a slaughter for no good reason. There's nothing worth their sacrifice, and I think there could be very well a spontaneous decision just to stop fighting, pivot, go to Kyiv, and terminate the problem. And the problem is Zelensky.
Anna Yurpolova in Moscow. The American authorities have brought charges against the guys from the American city of St. Petersburg for supporting Russia, communicating with Russians, and, quote, spreading disinformation. Obviously, this is hysteria and a violation of all possible rights. Do you think this precedent could pose a threat to you and your project?
Well, obviously, one's always has to be concerned about government overreach, and the FBI has a history of violating the rights of Americans. I think the people she's talking about is the Uhura group. It's black socialists.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read the charges put against them, the issue, everything begins with the fact that the way they operated was allowed to be interpreted by the U.S. government as they were unregistered agents of the Russian government. So basically, were serving as de facto agents. There were people that were traveling over there, working with the Russians, getting paid by the Russians, and and things of that nature. But we'll see how far this goes. Could this project be put at risk? I'm always concerned about that, but I think I'm assiduous, and I think Jeff is. We're both assiduous to how we're doing business. People say, "Well, you're paid by the Russians." Yeah, I am, but it's not illegal, and I'm not. It's not overwhelming. They're not dominating. But I write an article for RT. I get paid the going rate for an article. Does that mean I'm a tool of Russia taking direction? No, not at all. Everything we're doing is by the book, by the law, in conformity with the law. This book tour that I'm doing right now is, related to a signed book contract executed in accordance with the laws of the United States. It violates no sanctions. And this is a book tour just like every other book tour that's ever been done in the world, except it's being done in Russia. So, people might be upset about it. They might take umbrage at it, but there's no laws being violated, not even close. Now, here's the curious thing, disinformation. There's an article out there. The FBI is talking to a Ukrainian intelligence officer who runs their cyber security disinformation group. And he basically says that every time they see something on Facebook that they deem to be disinformation, they report it to the FBI, and then they want the FBI to take action to stop it. And then the guy was at, well, what's disinformation?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Anything we don't agree with, even if it's accurate. He said, even if it's accurate, if it's against our narrative, it becomes disinformation. And then we ask the FBI to shut it down. And the FBI acts on it. We know this by Matt Taibbi and what he's been doing with the Twitter files. That's problematic. That's a gross violation of the First Amendment. But that's the country you live in right now, Jeff, where the FBI is literally the Gestapo. There's no checks and balances. Hopefully, they won't turn their sights on us. I think that they would. I don't think they'd prevail. I think they'd lose this one, and I think they'd know they'd lose this one. But we'll see. I mean, my God, if we start getting traction, if this project of ours begins to work, if we put 10 million people in the streets and begins to have a political impact, and now politicians become scared, well, hopefully we have that problem, because that means we're doing
success.
Right.
Success does bring challenges, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll deal with it. Whatever, we deal with everything. Serjan from Belgrade, do you consider a risk of being denied entry back to the USA after your tour to Russia, similar to official accusations some reporters had in their countries that forced them to stay in Russia? Not a dissimilar question from the one we just had, but somewhat different.
No, first of all, they can't deny me entry. I'm an American citizen. Unlike those other countries, I think Germany's one he's talking about. They don't get to do that. I mean, if they wanted to detain me upon entry and accuse me of something, that's a different story. But they can't deny me entry. I'm an American citizen. My citizenship hasn't been revoked, and I will be allowed back into the country. That's a 100% guarantee. So I'm not worried about that at all.
All right. Our audience may need to see your papers. Do you have them handy?
Which papers?
The ones that prove you're an American.
I have a receipt from the United States Postal Service. That's proof positive.
That'll suffice. We're not too strict here. Johan from Sweden, are you coming here in October? I have no idea where this question came from. Was there a talk of you going to Sweden in October?
No, but
it's a very specific question. He's not asking like, might you ever come? He's saying specifically October, as if there was some talk about that. No?
I haven't been invited. Are the Swedes publishing my book, and there's a secret book tour I don't know anything about?
Well, if you do go there, apparently October is the month, not November, not September, but October. The October surprise. You've heard of that. Maybe this is the October surprise. Surprise to you. Tom's friend in Colchester, England. Zelensky is in trouble. Can he resign from office? What will happen to him if he does?
I mean, of course he can resign, but he can't stay. He's corrupt. I mean, this is a criminal enterprise, and if he resigns and stays in Kiev, he'll be killed, straight up killed. That's what you do to retired criminals. You don't get to hang around. What he needs to do is get on an airplane, get the hell out of Ukraine, and then submit his resignation papers remotely. While he's safe and under somebody's protection. But no, it's a very, I personally believe that he's in a very dangerous situation, because the whole system's falling apart and his corruption's being exposed, and they're only getting more corrupt. So we'll see what happens.
Assange was arrested in Sweden. Well, all right. I'm not sure what that means. But.
Yeah, but he did something that prompted an allegation in Sweden. I mean, last time I checked, I haven't done anything in Sweden. So
that was the rape or sexual.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm just saying that something happened that generated a complaint in Sweden that led to his arrest. If I arrive in Sweden, what are they going to charge me with when I get off the airplane? Just being me? I'm guilty.
Don't plant any ideas in people's minds. All right, let's move on to our next question from Fu in Chicago. What do you make of the phone call between Zelensky and Xi Jinping? Pointless diplomatic fluff, or an actual chance to bring the war to an end? By the way, somebody on, I think it was YouTube, was scolding you, well, trying to be helpful actually, about your pronunciation. It's Xi. Do you admit to pronouncing it some other way?
I admit to pronounce it the way I pronounce it.
How do you pronounce it?
I don't know. It changes over time because I butcher everything.
It depends what mood.
I've been told that it's Xi Jinping, but I also oftentimes say Xi Jinping.
Yeah, right.
What do you want?
I don't know. I'm just passing along a comment I saw. All right, let's get to the question then. Sorry to upset you, especially since it's on the eve of your departure. I shouldn't upset you.
Well, now you have me very self-conscious because now I'm not even going to be able to speak Russian while I'm over there because I know I'm going to basically butcher it. And then somebody on YouTube is going to hold me to account, probably my wife, who doesn't allow me to speak Russian because I butcher it. So anyways, pointless diplomatic fluff. Xi Jinping doesn't engage in pointless diplomatic fluff. China is flexing its diplomatic muscle. I think we see that with what they've done between Iran and Saudi Arabia. We see what they've done getting Syria and Saudi Arabia together with Russia's help. And they are the adults on the world stage right now. They're the ones who are playing the diplomatic card that the United States used to play. Everybody, when there was a problem, would say, "Will the Americans intervene?" Well, today you don't want the Americans to intervene because we tend to kill you. We tend to blow you up. We tend to bring in the military. China brings in diplomats. They talk about trade relations. They talk about mutually beneficial trade agreements. And next thing you know, peace is breaking out all over. Xi Jinping went to Moscow for 3 days, met with Putin, had very detailed discussions. And I guarantee you they discussed this issue. And so when this phone call was made, it was done because China believed that there could be something gained from it. They have a strategy, and that strategy isn't to look foolish. And if all you were trying to do is get diplomatic fluff, then you look foolish. China believes that there's a possibility to achieve a negotiated termination of this conflict. And the fact that they believe that is because Russia told them they are amenable to a negotiated into this conflict in terms that are reflective of reality, not the fiction that Ukraine is putting out there. So I think China is making an effort, and I think they'll make a concerted effort. But the key will be Ukraine and Zelensky. And already, I think one of Zelensky's advisors has come out and just said just utterly stupid things about China, and if China doesn't come all the way over to Ukraine's side, then they're useless. That and the other, and if you want to get the Chinese to say, "All right, we tried, but Russia, go," then that's the way to do it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The phone call was between president to president, so all these other minor players are just voicing opinions until President Zelensky comes out and shuts the door on it. I think China will continue to try to get some sort of negotiated peace.
All right. I'd like to remind folks that next Friday night in this time slot is the premiere episode of Strange Bedfellows with Laurie Spencer and Tyler McConnell. So I hope you'll check that out, and they'll be sort of babysitting that time slot while Scott is in Russia before we find a more permanent time slot for them upon his return. And
I feel like that injured quarterback who has been put on the bench, and he's watching that rookie Heisman Trophy winner run onto the field, and he's like, "Oh, Coach, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better. Jeff, I'm not going on this trip, man. I don't want to give up this slot."
Well, it's not so bad if it makes you feel pressure to maintain excellence. I mean, we can live with that.
I know now I understand why you're doing this to me.
All right. And while Scott is gone, he will not be able to fulfill book orders. We've been offering folks an autographed copy of his book, and you can order it if you want while he's away, but just know that it won't be able to be fulfilled until June. And the T-shirt, however,
what it's on the books real quick. The other problem was that Clarity is the press, the publisher. They ran out of books. Yeah. I mean, I ordered 100 books a while ago, and they're like, "No, we don't have any books. We got to print new ones." And I guess that's a good thing, but it's bad if your guys are putting in orders, which I thank you for. Thank you very much. But so there was two issues. One was I was building up these orders while I'm waiting for books to come so I could fulfill the orders. And two, the books weren't coming because there are no books, and the orders keep coming in. I promise you, by the time I come back, there will be 100 books here, and every order that's in will definitely get fulfilled and mailed out in rapid order upon my return. So don't think I'm blowing you off. I hope you guys support this trip and understand that because I haven't mastered the art of cloning myself yet, I can't do two things at the same time on two different continents.
Okay, and we will be able to fulfill orders of the T-shirt, and there it is being modeled by the very studly Ryan Milton.
And he's not asking for money for this, is he? I mean,
not so far, but we'll see.
I mean, come on, because look at that body. That's a gym body. That guy's been to the gym a lot, which tells me that he thinks he's a professional bodybuilder and he wants to get paid for it. I don't know, Jeff. I think we should. I don't. First of all, if it sells T-shirts, then okay. But
Well, speaking of selling T-shirts, I want to tell folks that this shirt, for some reason, seems to have magical qualities. He didn't have that physique until after he got the T-shirt. There's something about it. Yeah. If
right.
you want to look,
he was 350 pounds.
Yeah. If you want to look like that, go to scottrittermerch.com. That's scottrittermerch.com. That is one good-looking T-shirt. And never mind Van Cliburn, his sexuality. I tell you, I've spent my whole life as a heterosexual, but I look at Ryan, and I don't know. I may have to reassess. There's something about that guy that.
Are you saying that Ryan brings out your inner?
my inner Van Cliburn.
There you go, Jeff. You're going to get us in trouble.
All right, that's okay. Whatever. Controversy is our specialty. Adam from Chicago. I fully support your efforts, not just partially, but he fully supports your efforts to promote Russian-American friendship. While you are in Russia, might it be possible to begin organizing some type or types of online friendship activities? A future trip of Americans to Russia, perhaps led by you, and perhaps even the reverse.
These are very good ideas, Adam, but here's the problem. The United States right now has a history of, there's two things. The CIA is very active in trying to promote dissent in Russia. And they've used a variety of vectors to get this done. And it would just, I think, be counterproductive for me to try and organize anything because right off the bat, I haven't earned their trust. America hasn't earned their trust, and any kind of activity like that would be stillborn because it's too soon. Too soon. We got to take baby steps. I think if Russia is going to organize, Russia has to organize based upon Russia's desire, et cetera. To have an American come over and try to organize. If I were the Russians, I'd look at it suspiciously just because the CIA has a bad track record over there. Yeah, and there's already groups. There's sister cities. There's groups that are already there that maybe we can help show an example of how this can work if you just breathe life back into an existing structure. One of the things that got these other groups in trouble was that they were organizing tours and taking the United States just put a they indicted a Russian American girl, a Russian girl who was doing tours. And I mean, it's amazing. This shows you how stupid the Americans are. They're doing a tour where they're gathering people, and then they submit packages to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, visas, and the packages ask things like names, etc. But they also ask, education and your background. Stan, I just filled out a visa application. You have to put all that stuff in there. But what the FBI says is they were collecting biographical data so they can begin to recruit these people. And so the United States, the FBI, Department of Justice was viewing what he was just saying, taking tour groups over. They're not viewing it as taking a tour group over. They're viewing it as us working with the Russian government to bring Americans over so they can be recruited by the FSB. And even if that's not the case, that's the perception. And so we have to first of all, create an environment where we lose that paranoia, where it's not seen as suspicious to take a group of people over to Russia. But we're not there yet. I mean, they just indicted this girl. They literally just indicted this girl. So if I came back and said, I want to set up a, I don't know, what do you call it?
NGO,
No, the tax-free thing.
a nonprofit, a
A
501c.
nonprofit or whatever, where a charity or something like that. That was well-meaning. Hey, let's go over and do a tour. Let's go over and do that.
Yeah.
It can't happen unless you have connectivity with the Russian government, which right now is the kiss of death. It doesn't matter if it's pure intent. And
well, what about
wrong.
this group that the commenter mentioned, or any of the other ones? I'm not familiar with any of them. I'm looking up Friends of Russia online as we speak, and it's not showing up even. Are you familiar with this?
Look, if there's groups out there that are I'm just telling you right now that I think that the FBI will view any effort to organize and send Americans over that has the involvement of the Russian government. They're going to view it as a recruitment vehicle. Because there's just that level of paranoia. We need to break down the Russophobia. The FBI is empowered by the fear of the American people about their ignorance about Russia. As long as the American people accept at face value the notion that Russia's, look, I'm not going to give away. I had a conversation with somebody tonight, and they basically said, I don't understand why the Russians are interested in a book about perestroika when they live in a dictatorship. And I went, first of all, the Russians aren't interested in a book about perestroika because they don't like perestroika. That's why they changed the title of the book. And second of all, it's not a dictatorship. But did you see that the question was framed by ignorance, absolute ignorance? And until we find a way to break down that ignorance, I think individuals organize themselves. I think the key here is, rather than me organize people, again, the idea is for people to find their inner Van Cliburn. You're going to have to organize yourself for the time being. You're going to have to make sure that every aspect of what you want to do is driven by your motivations, et cetera, that you can't be accused of being used by outside powers. We live in a very strange time. This is a very worrisome time. But this is the first step of a journey, the first step. And we have to understand that as important as this first step is, it's a marathon. That first step ain't getting us over the finish line. We've got 26 miles worth of work to do before we get over the finish line. But we aren't going to get to the finish line until we take the first step. So that's what we're doing here. We're taking the first step. But I think we have to keep expectations very, very realistic here. It's going to require a lot of work. This is why we're going to make a documentary film. We're working on making a documentary film. And I think Jeff has flashed it down there. Any assistance people would like to provide us, because documentary films aren't free. Wagingpeace.fund is the way to do it. And I know that Jeff, we're going to be working on putting together some sort of mini trailer while I'm away. And this is not a static project. This is a project we just had this week. We had conference calls talking about this project. So we're moving forward. This isn't theoretical. This is real. It's going to happen. But that movie is part of what we're talking about, educating people, to take this movie around and begin a process of educating. That's the next step. And then the next step after that, the next step. And soon all the things that people are talking about here will be possible. But we can't go from A to Z. There's a whole bunch of letters in between that we got to we got to dot and cross and all that other kind of stuff.
By the way, speaking of those conference calls we had, I have had a lot of experience in working in television as a writer, producer, actor, and not to toot my own horn or anything, but the fact is I've collaborated with a bunch of very talented people. And I just want to say, I've never encountered anybody as creative as Scott Ritter is. You think he's some jarhead or something. This guy has so many great ideas and such a great vision for this project. And the way he talks to the creative people in the conference call, I got to ask them if they agree with me, because they've all collaborated with all sorts of artistic people too. as far as I'm concerned, I have never encountered anybody more creative than Scott Ritter.
Well, I appreciate that.
Oh, that's how you do it, huh?
It's like, oh my God, No, I don't smoke dope.
We're talking, for example, to somebody who's going to do the soundtrack for the film, and the way he's talking about using music and the selection of songs and exactly how to interject it. Like, whew, this is not your typical Marine.
No, and well, yeah, but it's not. I mean, this guy, I knew who he was and I knew his background, but when he told me the soundtrack he worked on, I was like, A, I really like that soundtrack, and B, you did that. So yeah.
Do we want to say his name? I don't want to force you to make a commitment before.
Well, first of all, he hasn't until
Yeah.
we don't want to do that to anybody.
All right. Hint: it is not. I won't make that joke. I won't even make that joke. Hey, so also speaking of not wanting to put you on the spot, like I said, I haven't found the URL for Friends of Russia, but if somebody does, I mean, would you be uncomfortable about just putting out there so people can check it out if they want to?
As long as it's not seen as me promoting it, because I don't know anything about them. I haven't run the. I haven't. Yes,
same here. I just I'm aroused my curiosity.
I think no. I don't think we should be promoting anything that we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah. All right. All I'm saying is I can't find it, and that makes me go, what the hell that's all about? All right, let's go to our next question from Gerhard in Austria. Do you see any chance there is some kind of reconciliation between Russia and Ukraine after the war, whatever Ukraine might look like then? Do you think it's possible the majority of Ukrainians realize they were abused by the West?
Well, the key question here is, what is Ukraine going to look like after the war? I mean, we already know that they lost the East. That's never coming back. Crimea is never coming back. And I think there's a growing recognition that while Odessa, Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkov, these areas are Ukrainian, but they're Slavic, meaning that they belong to they're part of the Russian nation. And the Russian nation is beyond the Russian Federation. The Russian nation is a collective of people with shared ethnicity, shared language, shared religion, shared culture, shared history. Sesame Street used to have one of those little ditties. One of these things is not like the other. Can you tell which one? And when you lay out Ukraine, one of these things is not like the other. That's Western Ukraine. Doesn't belong. Doesn't belong. That doesn't have shared history. They don't have shared religion. They don't have shared culture. They don't have shared language. They don't have shared anything. It was a part of, a territory that was added on artificially. And I don't think that Russia and Western Ukraine will ever be able to reconcile. That's just straight up. I think the hatred is so deep. These are Banderists to the core, all of them. You aren't from Lviv, or whatever they want to call it, if you're not a Banderist. Straight up. They don't like Russians. They view them as subhumans, orcs. And Russians don't like them because of the way they've been treated. So I don't think there can ever be reconciliation there. And if Ukraine is to continue to exist with the Western Ukrainian cancer appended to it, that's problematic. Because there's no amount of denazification that can take place short of things that civilized nations don't do anymore. So, it was interesting because Medvedev, Dmitry Medvedev, former president, current member of the National Security Council, was basically insinuating that just give Western Ukraine to Poland. Get rid of it. Smartest thing anybody could do, to tell you the truth, is ultimately, when this is done, jettison Western Ukraine. Get rid of it. Make it no longer part of the equation. Make it Poland's problem. Make it Europe's problem. But it shouldn't be Ukraine's problem. It shouldn't be Russia's problem. Vladimir Putin in April 2005 spoke of being the president of all the Russian nation. Western Ukraine is not the Russian nation. It has nothing in common with anybody else. They hate each other. Gone. if you take Western Ukraine out of the picture, I definitely believe there can be reconciliation between Ukraine and Russia. Why? Because they're the same people. They're the same people, same history, same culture. Right now, really difficult times, but at the end of the day, they will live together in peace because that's their fate. They are family. They're having a bad family squabble right now, But how many people would have thought that somebody from Alabama could ever reconcile with somebody from New York after the American Civil War? We made it. Why? Because we're all Americans. So we figured it out. We got over that. We crossed that hurdle. And Ukrainians and Russians will cross that hurdle. It won't be easy. It'll be difficult, but but it isn't. There's no bridging the difference between Western Ukraine and the rest of Ukraine and the rest of Russia. I personally don't believe that that's possible.
All right. Ann Moss is handling backstage duties tonight, and we thank her for that. Some folks have been asking, whatever happened to Tori Mansfield? Well, Tori has a full-time job, so it got to be too much for her, but she still does our Sunday podcast, Scenes from the Evolution, and we do that every Sunday. Oh, please feel free to help yourself to a beverage. We do that every Sunday.
It's Friday.
1 p.m. Eastern Time. That's right. Adult beverages optional, also soft drinks optional. So, Ann, let's line up some questions that are coming in live on YouTube and Facebook. We have one more of the questions that were submitted in advance. And then, Ann wants to... Oh, hello,
I'm
Ann.
here. I'm ready.
All right. Thank you. A rare physical appearance by Ann. Thank you. Sometimes we hear her voice.
Thanks.
That's what she looks like. So line up some good ones coming in live on Facebook and YouTube. And we'll do one more of the questions that we have already submitted from Centaur, from Vladivostok, Russian Federation. Many of your Russian followers can read English and prefer to do it because translation may change the meaning of some phrases or even entire sentences. Will it be possible to buy your signed original book, non-translated, at your events in Russian cities? How's that for a question?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, given the state of play right now, it's not possible for the English version of this book to be brought into Russia in quantities that would make this viable. I mean, I have to tell you, people are like, Scott, bring me a copy of the English book. Well, first of all, guys, I sent them all out because people bought them. So I don't have any copies left. They're gone. But let's just hypothetically say that I had 100 copies here. How the hell am I going to get them in there? I got one suitcase. I'm going for 26 days. That's a lot of socks. And now I got to jam in books. It's just not possible. If it was, trust me, I would do it in a heartbeat. I love nothing more than the idea of people wanting to read this book. That's why I wrote this book. And I think it's an important book, and et cetera. And I understand what you're talking about, translation. I get it. But let me, since this is the loquacious time, I'm allowed to do this. Do not whip me, Jeff. Do not whip me.
No, not at all. That doesn't happen on Friday nights.
Yeah, but you're a mean guy. So,
well, that's true. But
that is true. But anyways.
Oh, sorry.
Damn, you did it. So, all right. Where was it? Oh, yeah. The people that decided that they wanted to publish this book, they basically signed my name correctly, right? Oh, Valley. If that's if you're who I think you are, I signed it the way that the order told me to sign it. So that's it. But
he's a good Marine. He follows orders.
I just follow orders. Exactly what you put down on the request is what you get. Even if I look at it and go, I don't want to do that, but I do it because you requested it, you pay for it, you get what you pay for. But they took my English version to Moscow State University, Department of English, and they picked the 5 best American colloquial speakers, and they made a team. And the orders were not just to translate this book, but to capture the essence, the spirit, the nuance that I was putting out in, because this was written, not just in the English language, but this was written by an American, using military expressions and things of that. So it's sort of a unique version of English regardless. And so now you have to have Russians translate that and capture that. And they pick the 5 top. I hope I get to meet these people and shake their hand, because from what everybody's saying, they did a really good job. So
well, your wife reads and speaks Russian fluently, correct?
You mean Voldemort?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, has she read the Russian version and given her assessment of it?
She did.
Okay.
She found 15 spelling errors, 3 grammatical mistakes, and that's but she does, when she reads my books, even after my books are published. For instance, I can take this masterpiece, Scott Ritter's Iraq Confidential, the inside story of the weapons inspections, and she could randomly open it up to any page and go grammar, grammar, spelling, spelling, because she's that good and that evil. So
every book has a few mistakes. Every book.
Apparently, every page of any book I ever write, I will never get it right, because. Right. No, but the point is, no, they did a good job. They did a really good job.
Military jargon must be very difficult to translate, I would think.
It is, and sometimes it's impossible to translate. But I have to tell you, it's impossible for English speakers to understand too. If you put too much military jargon, too many acronyms, sometimes I forget that I'm not addressing people who worked with me. So I'm going to say, well, we took the DPR 50 to the cargo scan, and we got ACES to come in and work with DPRA to get the AC 1213 up and running. And to me, it makes perfect sense. And the average person can be going, I have no clue what you're saying, man. None whatsoever. So then you got to break that. And this was the beauty of, I have a built-in writing support team. It was called My Daughters and Their Boyfriends, because they know nothing about what I did. Nothing. So I hand them the draft chapter. They come back and they literally circle it. What does this mean? What is this? None of this makes any sense. And so I basically had to rewrite it so idiots could understand it. And I don't mean that bad for them. I mean it that basically I could assume nothing. Everything that was down there had to be explained. So if there's a piece of equipment, I have to explain what it is and all that stuff. And I literally had to write some of these chapters 4 or 5 times until they went, oh, now we understand. So
that's quite a process.
Oh, it was a big process. Yeah. Believe me. And I'm the kind of guy, I mean, I'm all smiles right now, but anybody who's ever watched me take criticism after I spend a lot of time writing a chapter, I don't take criticism very well. I'm a spoiled little brat. And they're sitting there going, we don't understand. And then I finally blow up, go outside, kick the dog, and come back in again. Okay. And then I rewrite it. And then they do it again. And now I'm really hurt because I thought I answered the questions and they didn't. So I break down into tears. I go off and cry in the corner. And then I come back. It's an emotionally draining experience to write with me. It's tough.
You take my suggestions for the Substack quite well. At least you pretend to.
You don't see me on video, Jeff. You only see the email after I've calmed down. You don't see the holes in the walls. Right, Jeff, boom, boom. No, I'm okay. I'm not as bad as I make myself out to be, but I am pretty sensitive when it comes to writing, especially when I put a lot of if I really pour myself into something and feel like I captured it, I feel good about it, and then people read it and go, but we don't understand. What do you mean? It's my life. You have to understand my life. My life must have meaning. So it's tough being a writer.
All right. Let's go to the questions from our live audience coming in on YouTube and Facebook. We also stream live to Twitter, Scott's favorite social media outlet, as well as Rumble and Twitch, but we can only insert the live questions that are coming in on YouTube and Facebook. Amit Rao. Why isn't India offering its diplomatic services to bring peace in Ukraine? Would she not be potentially more acceptable as a mediator than China, whom the U.S. considers as enemy number 1?
There's 2 things. I mean, first of all, good question, fair question. But this negotiation, this peace treaty isn't about the United States. The United States actually has to be excised from the process. They're the problem, not the solution. Is India willing to build a belts and roads, you know, to connect it with Ukraine, to pour hundreds of billions of dollars into rebuilding Ukraine? Is the Indian economy ready to make that level of commitment? I don't think so. China is. That's what China offers Ukraine. And do the Indians have the relationship with Russia that China does? Can Mr. Modi fly to Moscow and get that, that level of interaction? Is India the same level of strategic partner with Russia as China is? India's foreign minister is excellent. I agree 100%, but it's beyond it's the foreign minister. It's what India itself can put on the table, what they can throw up there. And right now, China's uniquely positioned. China is the big power right now that can go to Russia, get Putin's attention. The United States has its attention, and it can put something meaningful on the table for Zelensky. I don't think India is there yet. India should, I think, be involved in diplomacy. That would be wonderful. And maybe there might be a role for India in Ukraine right now. But I think right now China is perfectly positioned to be the nation that could pull this off. I just don't think India brings enough to the table to be able to untangle this particular knot.
Not that it's a big deal or anything, but just out of curiosity, what's up with referring to nations in the female gender? Did you notice he said she, India? Wouldn't she be? What's the origin of that is? Why nations are female, not male? Have you ever thought about that? And then after thinking about it, what was your conclusion? Stupid question that I'm asking.
No. Motherland.
Mother Russia, you say.
There's other fatherland. I mean, so she. I don't know. It's the same thing with ships. Ships are she.
Oh yeah.
She was a good ship because it's the home, it's the vessel, it's
maybe yeah. All right. Lou. Scott, do you believe that America is turning into the old USSR? This is a very important question. You know how I know that? Because it's in all caps.
All caps. No, I think America is turning into America. Look, we were a nation that was born with a whole bunch of problems. Slavery. Women didn't have rights. We were focused on landowners, not on the poor people. We had two kinds of slavery in America. We had of course, African slaves, but then we had the indentured servants. The Scotch Irish were a form of slaves, people tied to the land. And we've been struggling. We had problems with the American Indians, Native Americans. America is a nation that has a whole bunch of problems, American problems, unique to America. Our Constitution speaks of trying to, we the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union. So it's a process. And for a while, it looked like we were actually, in a very painful manner, moving toward becoming that better union. We had a civil war. Slavery was abolished. Women got the right to vote. We got laws in place to promote equality, but we've stumbled. Civil rights never really got finished. We still have huge racial problems. Gender inequality. I mean, if you don't think there's a glass ceiling in America today, then you're probably a guy. So we have a lot of issues, and we've stalled, and in some cases we've gone backwards. So the idea that we're the old USSR. Remember, the USSR. And here's the problem, Lou. You asked me a question, and the historian in me is probably getting into the dirt, and I'm missing the fact that you're probably making a broad generalization, because I see other people saying Lou's right. So I don't want to say Lou's wrong. I'm just saying, from my perspective as a historian, I always get into the dirt, and therefore, for me, the USSR is linked to Russian history. the czars. We didn't have czars. The slow pace of industrialization. The roles of the Cossacks. Serfs, linked to the land ownership. This whole thing that was Russia wasn't America. America was different. So that's why I have trouble making the two meet. But I think if you're saying that the United States has become a stagnant society, now you might be onto something, because, Russia, although even when Russia was stagnant during the age of Brezhnev, I wasn't there, but people who lived during the age of Brezhnev said it was okay. It wasn't bad. I mean, it was okay, but it was stagnant, but it wasn't bad. Right now, I think in the United States, we're stagnant, but we say it's bad. It's bad. This isn't good in this country. During the age of Brezhnev, did you walk out into Leningrad and see, entire neighborhoods taken over by the homeless? No. But here in the United States today, homeless are everywhere. Our society is failing. Did they have, major infrastructure collapse during the time of Brezhnev? No. I mean, things went wrong. Planes crashed every now and then. Bad things happen, but that happens in any society. But here, I get in trouble every time I drive Voldemort around because I hit potholes. Now, in my defense, it's because there's a lot of potholes, because our roads suck. And they get worse every time it rains. For some reason, rain causes giant holes to appear in the asphalt, and right where my tire wants to be. And nobody's repairing them. It's just there. Bridges. You drive by these bridges every morning, and there's giant chunks of concrete that fell off overnight. Thank God there wasn't somebody below that when you see it, but you're just driving and going, where'd that come from? Oh, up there, the spalling. Our country's falling apart. I mean, I'm looking forward to going to Moscow because I've heard about the Moscow, subway, the metro. And what people are telling me is it's just gorgeous and beautiful. Well, I was just in New York City. I got to tell you, the New York City subway ain't gorgeous and beautiful.
Not gorgeous at all.
Not gorgeous at all.
In Los Angeles, it's like, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's the majority, I think, is just homeless people now. I'm not kidding.
No, but how can we as a society be proud of this? USA, America's number one. What? I mean, I love my country. I want my country to be number one. I would really like, but my God, that's not what we've become. And instead, we got this, when we talk about stagnation would actually be good because it's just sort of there. We're a country actively ripping itself apart politically. We are being polarized, spun in, and who knows what the heck this is going to, how this is going to finish. So I wouldn't compare it with the old USSR. I was in the old USSR. When I landed in 1988, it was the USSR. And while Moscow then, I'm anxious to see what Moscow is today because I understand it's like quite the modern city. Our friend Randy Credico just came back and he was just like, it's the greatest city in the world, man. The greatest city in the world. You wouldn't believe Moscow. Now, I think maybe he snorted some cocaine and took some acid or something, but I'll see for myself. But,
Yeah, you'll be the judge of that.
I'll be the judge of that. But I can tell you right now, again, as much as I love my country, New York City ain't the greatest city in the world. Not even close.
Hardly any of our cities are. I mean, now women have the right to vote now, but there's almost nobody who's worth voting for. It's a bit.
Did you see the trend? We gave women the right to vote, and our cities went to hell in a handbasket. Connectivity, Jeff. Good job.
On the other hand, the whole damn nation is feminine, so that's the trade-off.
As you cross your arms in a effeminate way.
Oh, I can't believe you said that. All right. I'll strike a more masculine pose, like
Well, right. Just take your. Yeah, there it is. The Ryan pose.
Do you see the difference between him and me? It's a
It's
a slight, barely perceptible.
One is photoshopped, and the other one's en naturel.
All right. I will neither confirm nor deny that assertion. Western Defector, thanks for the donation. I'm a U.S. expat in St. Petersburg. Which one? We've had questions about the one in Florida as well as Russia today, but
Well, he's
expat.
not in jail, so he obviously is not in the Florida St. Petersburg.
Okay. Are you coming here? If so, how can I find out about it? By the way, there's plenty of toilet paper. Well, gee, that is a way to attract tourists, if ever I've heard it.
No, that's thank you for that tip. I wasn't going to bring any because I've heard the same, but I have to tell you, when I used to travel in the Middle East, there was always some toilet paper in the suitcase because you could sometimes show up and it just got very inconvenient. We'll leave it at that.
Right.
Yeah. I'm at US. Okay. Am I coming to St. Peter? Yes, I am. I'll be in St. Petersburg, but it's up to it's up to the organizers to they're going to, what I would say is Komsomolskaya Pravda is the publisher, and they've done a really good job of marketing this. And this book tour, while I view it as an opportunity to meet people, talk to people, begin this process of tearing down ignorance, walls of ignorance, etc. Komsomolskaya Pravda is a business, and as much as they might like me, they like me better if books sell, and so they need to ensure that if they're bringing me to a given city, that people are informed about this in a timely fashion, so that they can they can buy the books. Now there is there's a security concern. And so we have to respect that. So we'll if you're in St. Petersburg and you want to find out about the event, I can pretty much guarantee you that you will be able to find out about the event in a timely fashion and be able to attend the event if that's possible. That's all I can say.
All right.
As for the books, I mean, I will say this because I will say this. They at one point in time, it looked like I'd be speaking to larger gatherings, but because of the security concerns, they don't want to put that many people into a space that becomes a target. And so I think they're going to be looking for smaller venues, but they're going to broadcast it on YouTube, but that doesn't help sell books. So I'm fairly certain that I will be signing an awful lot of books that will be left in bookstores, and then the value of the book will decrease by 33% the second I sign it. But we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, this show is all about revealing scoops that you can't get elsewhere. So I would like to announce at this time that Scott will be in St. Petersburg on either an even-numbered or odd-numbered day in May. Look at that picture, by the way.
I'll be there on an even and an odd number day.
Oh, more than one day. There's another scoop. Look at that serious look on your face. How many pictures did they go through to pick that one?
Oh, God, Jeff, you don't even want to know. Okay, so it's
yeah, I do want to know.
Okay, well, I'll tell you the story about this.
Okay.
They call up, and I sent them all the photographs of the book and everything, and they go, "No, we need a portrait." I said, I don't do portraits. I mean, I haven't posed in a portrait since I was a kid, since a school thing. So I did what every good American does. I took my cell phone and I and sent them a whole bunch of pictures. And they came back and they went, "Nah, nope, got to go to a professional studio." So we then went to a professional studio, and I proceeded to spend a lot of money to pose myself all over the place. And we sent those pictures in, and they went, "Nah." So basically, I'm the worst in the world at taking pictures, being photographed. And so they finally brought in one more. And they came in the house, and they took 1 million photographs, and there were literally only 2 that Voldemort said. Voldemort's going, "Nope, nope, 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 maybe, nope, 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 maybe." And the 2 maybes I sent, one's on the front cover and one's on the back cover, 2 different photographs. That's it. They took 1 million pictures of me, and it's just, apparently I am not photogenic. So I think anybody who watches this show understands why. So
I don't know if I would agree with that, but that's a very serious Scott Ritter there, bordering on almost mean. Remember, it was making me think of Muhammad Ali. Remember, he used to do the mean look, like to try to intimidate his opponents. Do you remember?
Well, this is the look that the camera. This is what happens after the camera person goes, smile, smile, smile. Okay, shift over, smile, smile. And about the 50th smile, I'm like, I ain't smiling anymore.
Yeah,
And I
right.
click the picture, and that's the one that worked.
Yeah, after you get sick of the whole photo session.
Well, I'm thankful for the person. I'm glad that they picked, because the two photos that they put on, they're not bad. I mean, you're working with this, so you get what you get. But they did a good job, and I'm grateful for the photographer who came in and took the time and effort to do something, because otherwise we were getting desperate, because they needed to print this book, and they're basically like, dude, anything, just come on, take a picture that won't break the camera.
Well, at least it's a new picture. It's hard to get you to pose for something new. The one we use all the time. Well, never mind. I won't highlight the fact it's not the most recent photo, but it's a good one. The one where you're being decisive. The very decisive weapons inspector.
That's right.
And let's come up with another question for the very decisive Scott Ritter. Jay Sookwinder, or some such thing. Maybe I'm pronouncing it correctly. Maybe I'm not. In any case, thanks for the donation, Jay. Do you think Putin will try and push for India-China rapprochement?
Rapprochement.
Rapprochement.
Yeah, thank you. You said it right. Drink some more French wine, and it'll roll off your tongue.
I have California at the moment, but best I
Are
can.
you out of Swiss?
No, I'm saving 2 more bottles for a special occasion.
Ooh. Okay. Here's the thing. Russia, I'll answer it this way. Russia, Xi Jinping, teaching old dog new tricks, went to Moscow. They had their 3-day meeting about strategic friendship, etc. And as soon as the Chinese president left, a Chinese warship sailed off the coast of Vietnam into waters that the Vietnamese claim, and the Russians are involved. Russian oil companies are involved in exploration and development of these waters for oil and gas. So it's a Russian interest there. And a Chinese warship came in, and everybody's like, wow, a Chinese warship going in against Russia. That means that Russia's relations with China are falling apart and the whole thing. And a Russian diplomat explained it, and he said, no, we don't live in a world of zero-sum games. It's not like everything has to go this way. We understand that there are nuances. There will be times when we disagree. There will be times when we're in opposition, et cetera. That doesn't change the strategic relationship. But the other thing is, Russia's not in the business of telling other nations what to do. And so I think what Russia, what I got from the guy about Vietnam and China was that Russia can be friends with Vietnam and have good relations with Vietnam, and can be friends with China and have good relations with China, even while India or Vietnam and China are not having good relations. That Russia doesn't have to pick a side. And with India and China, I think Russia's the same way. Russia will have good relations with India. Russia will have good relations with China. But ultimately, it's up to India and China to solve their problems. It's not Russia's role to encourage rapprochement. It's Russia's role to have good relations with India, and Russia's role to have good relations with China. They can encourage something, but I don't see the Russians trying to become peacemakers there. That's really up to India and China to sort that thing out, and that's the only way it's ever going to work. It's got to be something genuine coming from both nations.
Thanks for the donation, Alexander. Thanks to everybody for their support, and we certainly appreciate that. Catastrophic New England. How should the people of the world be responding to the increasing global surveillance state? What is your take on balancing safety and security versus authoritarian oppression of the masses? Ooh, that's a 30-minute speech. Are you ready to deliver that off the top of your head?
It's a loaded question. Look, in talking to people about going to Russia, I learned a couple things, and this is my way of getting to the answer, so forgive me. I learned that Russia, while they have cash, don't like using cash. It's become sort of a cashless society, especially in the big cities. They use digital cards. But here's the cool thing: they have something called Face Pay. Face Pay. So basically, you get your face scanned into the system, and it gets linked to your bank, your digital bank. For instance, on the metro, as you walk into the Russian metro, they have cameras all over the place. And when they get your face, they take the money away, and you just sort of walk on the subway and go. There's no tickets, there's nothing. It's just cashless society. Wow, that sounds pretty cool. Except somebody said, yeah, but during the pandemic, when we weren't supposed to be, more than 100 or so yards away from our house and all that, I got fined 5,000 rubles for being beyond, because they picked me up, but they fought it because they said that wasn't me, that the camera got it wrong. So there's two aspects there. One, there's no such thing as perfect security. Systems glitch, make mistakes. Two, was that the intent of Face Pay, to become part of a surveillance system? Now, people would say, well, if the rule is you're not supposed to be 100 meters from your house, and Face Pay finds you 5 kilometers from your house, what's the difference between that and a cop, getting and writing you a ticket in person?
Well, it's like we have red light cameras here in the U.S., the cameras at intersections.
Well, you notice, like when we had a murder here a couple years ago, Porco murder, and the kid was in college up in Buffalo, and he came home, and the way they digitally did it, but he went through and paid his toll. But each time you go through the toll thing and pay the toll, there's cameras taking pictures of your license plates and your face and this, and the cops were able to track his movements, using a system that was designed for tolls. But see, that's not authoritative. That's not authoritarian abuse right there. That's law enforcement. And to be honest, I'm not against law enforcement. I mean, there's the old saying: if you haven't committed a crime, you don't have to worry. And that's right, unless you get an authoritarian regime that starts to criminalize things that shouldn't be criminalized. For instance, dissent, opposing points of view, things of that nature. And so I don't think you should have mass surveillance that is not transparent to the public. I think if you're going to have mass surveillance, if you're going to invest in this kind of system, it has to be a transparent system. It can't be something that only a few goons up in a room have access to, and they use it the way they want to use it. I think it needs to be fully transparent, and otherwise, yeah, it can be taken advantage by authoritarian regimes. I mean,
I would
China.
think the ordinary people could also abuse the system. If, like in Hollywood, I imagine they have the same technology in Russia. People can alter their face, theatrical masks, and make your face look different. I wonder what would happen if it just didn't detect anybody, or.
There was a interesting show a while back called The Patriot. Mm-hmm. It's 2 seasons. I loved the show. It was great. It was basically a CIA guy. You remember? Are you familiar with the show?
No. You know me. I only watch PBS documentaries.
True. Well, boy, do I feel sort of pedantic right now. Anyways, the show, in the end, he had to get out, and they were doing surveillance, and he had his teeth pulled, and then they replaced a finger for the fingerprint. The bottom line is he altered his face so that facial recognition wouldn't get it. So sure, you can do it. Look, in the CIA, I'm not giving away secrets here. There's a video on YouTube that shows 2 ladies walking out of the U.S. Embassy going shopping together, and they got their face. They're wearing skirts and wigs, and they look just like ladies. They're both men. But they're wearing masks that have been created by the CIA to replicate, and they learned how to walk feminine-like, and they have big bags, and then they go into the ladies' room, and they come out as men.
Right.
and go. And I just remember in the video, I think there's, somebody, the guy's coming out, and some Russian lady's getting ready to go in, and she's like, Well, the problem is they forgot to remember that everything in Russia there's video cameras every, so the FSB was able to come back and go, we got you. We know.
Okay. Also, the cost of doing that might be greater than the money you save from not paying your train fare, too. I mean,
Look, the bottom line is just, obey the rules that are easy to obey. I mean, it's not like, paying a subway fare is, asking too much. Society's asked too much of me today. I can't pay my subway fare.
all right, you talked me into it. I will not be jumping the turnstiles. All right, let's get back to the questions. And Klaus. I remember Klaus. I worry the Dems will fix the presidential election because in reality now the deep state is in control and every day becomes more like 1984. Thoughts?
Now, when we say fix, look, God, this is where we get in trouble, man. This is like, I wrote an article back in after the November election, but before the inauguration, and I basically said that the Democrats fixed the election, but I didn't say that it was fraudulent. I didn't accuse them of mail-in. I didn't accuse them of outright cheating. What I said is that they were very clever in going in and capturing the system, every aspect of the system, going to local courts and getting laws changed.
Yeah, having mail-in ballots and that
right
sort.
To create systems that were obviously to the advantage of the Democrats, and they did in a way that didn't give the Republicans a chance to.
Censoring the president of the United States.
Correct. The media was in play with this.
The Hunter Biden story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wrote this article, and nobody would touch it. Nobody would touch it. They were like, nah, too controversial. Well, literally about, I think, a week after they turned it down, Time Magazine came out with a story, basically bragging how we stole the election. Now, they didn't, it wasn't fraud, but they did everything I wrote down there, they're admitting to. Yeah, we did this. Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we had whole campaigns together on how to shape the image, how to take control of social media, how to change voting laws, how to get mail-in ballots in. And I'm reading my article going, yep, gosh. But my article was called Conspiracy Theory at the time. I think that's a problem. It's not that they violated the Constitution, but I think they were extra constitutional, meaning that the Constitution sort of, dictates how we think things are done. And what these guys did is they played a completely different game, where that the Constitution didn't envision what they were doing. We tend to believe in free discussion, free debate, dialogue, discussion. These guys hijacked social media, hijacked the media, deliberately sought to suppress one person while giving voice to this other person, and I think it definitely put a finger on the scale and gave Biden the victory. Now
there's corruption everywhere, Scott. Corruption everywhere. So even though there's not evidence, it's not ridiculous to just assume there's corruption when it comes to counting ballots, especially since all these states have all these different ways of doing it.
Yeah,
I mean, why would counting ballots be the only thing that's not fraught with corruption?
Look, the problem is everything you're saying is correct, Jeff. But and I know that the second we say this, our emails are going to get lit up. Our comments. I'm not reading the comments now, and I'm sure there's people in there right now. You communist mother, name calling. We're never going to support you again. Okay, don't. I don't. I mean, it's not that I don't care, but if that's what you want to do it. We don't have a good. Let me just make it as clear as possible. We send monitors around the world to monitor elections around the world because we're supposed to be the epitome of democracy. And we hold people to standards, high standards on this. We can't pass our own standards. If American monitors came and monitored American elections, we'd fail across the board. We run the most incompetent, mind-bending, mind-numbing, stupid, elections in the world. We can't, Iraq can tell you who won the damn election the day of the election during a war. Okay, we have to have recount after recount. As you said, what the hell are they recounting and how are they recounting? I mean, when I hear people say, well, we did a recount in the vote, but it's meaningless because you're not addressing some of the issues that other people have brought up. Our system is broke. And because no one's fixing it, it can be manipulated, as they proved in 2020. So let me make it as simple as possible. If Joe Biden wins the Democratic nomination and then gets reelected as president, it's a rigged system. Because there's no way a rational nation would ever put that man in office again under any circumstance. It's a rigged system. 70% of the Democratic Party do not want this man to run again. It's a rigged system. They won't let him debate RFK Jr. because RFK Jr. would wipe the floor with this guy. It's a rigged system. The DNC is going in and flipping all the primaries around, and they're not even going to, there's no debates, nothing. It's a rigged system. And now when they move in against Trump or whoever the Republican nominee will be, I can guarantee you that the Democratic Party with their media allies are going to rig the system. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say, voter fraud and all this kind of stuff, but it is a rigged system. This is not democracy. The American people don't have a say here. If Joe Biden gets nominated in the Democratic system and then becomes president again in 4 years, it's a rigged system, straight up.
Well, the best thing about this conversation is that you uttered the words, everything you say is correct, Jeff. So I'm going to have to exercise great restraint in using that audio clip repeatedly in forthcoming episodes of Ask the Inspector. You said the word. I didn't make you say it. You said it.
It's not involved in the First Amendment issues related to Citizens United.
I'm going to take that audio clip. I'm going to boost the volume, and I'm going to put it on a loop, and we are going to hear that nonstop. All right. While you're away next, starting tomorrow, actually, next Friday in this time slot, we are debuting a show called Strange Bedfellows, and that is going to be hosted by Tyler McConnell and Laurie Spencer, and this will be occupying this time slot while you're away. It's a show that brings together thought leaders from all sides of the political spectrum, and that is what we need in our society. And
Tyler's a school teacher, right?
He is a school teacher. He's also a chemist, or not a chemist, a pharmacist technician.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, right. Well, let's actually see if we can get somebody who's an authority on that subject to answer that question more accurately than we can.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm here in Walter White's basement.
You're here where?
I'm in Walter White's basement here.
Breaking Bad. That's
Don't tell the school. Don't tell the school.
All right, I just butchered your occupation. Why don't you clarify what you do when you're not pontificating about matters of political import?
Well, I'm mostly a school teacher. Next year will be my 6th year. I teach high school English. I teach a little journalism. We're presently reading through 1984 in class, which is very apropos these days. And on the weekend, for a little extra money, sometimes I work at I'm a pharmacy tech at the local Walmart. Keeps me in touch with the working class. So that is that's my day job.
You can get good drugs, right?
well, I make sure to have the pharmacist double check everything I get. So personally.
Oh, all right. So Strange Bedfellows is a concept that Laurie Spencer, your co-host, has been developing, and you two are now going to be doing this show with us, and I couldn't be happier about that. Scott is worried about losing his time slot here, though. What do you think? Does he have anything to worry about?
Not a thing to worry about. Not a thing. Unless I hang out as a UN weapons inspector for a few years and figure out what's really going on in Iraq. I'll hold Salem, Missouri classrooms down, Scott. You keep doing your international stuff. How about that?
So give us an idea of what sort of topics you and Lori will be discussing. What can folks expect from Strange Bedfellows? I love that title, by the way. It's perfect.
It is. It's fantastic. Well, I can't wait till Lori gets in here because it's really her baby, and I
What?
don't want to
Lori's
steal
coming?
her
Lori's
thunder.
coming? I didn't know that. Wow. All right. Well,
Um,
let's steal her thunder until she's here.
yeah, absolutely. The way she pitched it to me was that, well, so much of internet political talk these days is just divisive. You know, like I want to watch a Marxist debate a libertarian or something to that effect. And I first met Scott at a event put on by my good friend and comrade Caleb Maupin at the Center for Political Innovation. Hey, Lori, welcome.
Hey guys, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, you're fine. But I met Scott. I think it was after the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I saw Scott in the hallway. I fanboyed a little bit. I walked
Yeah,
up.
you
and,
did. You
I
totally
shook
did.
his hand. I asked for a picture. I told him he was an American hero, which he absolutely is.
Absolutely.
And he got on stage and gave a speech, and I hooted and hollered. And Scott started out his speech by saying, you know, most of my life I wanted to kill communists. And now I just hugged one, and he looked right at me. And I was a little nervous, but I smiled real big. And that's kind of what our show's about.
Exactly.
Lori's,
Hugging communists?
well,
All right.
you know, whatever. Whatever works, whatever passes the time. But you know, on the left and right, there's a lot of agreement on the side of the fence that's anti-establishment and thinks we could make a better use of the $200 billion or whatever's going to the Ukraine. I could use it in my classroom. I think we could use it to fix the infrastructure in this country, as Scott was talking about earlier in the stream. There's so much we can use this for. You know, we got a lot of kids that can't buy a home because they're so in college debt, you know, from the neoliberal Clinton years.
Exactly.
Have a sip,
And-
Tyler. We don't want you too parched while you're talking. You're doing great.
So that's what I got out of it. Is me and Lori are gonna create a place for strange bedfellows to get together. People that
Lori,
might have
look at
wanted
this
to
comment.
kill
Lori,
each other years ago.
look at the comment. Can't see Lori's face. We have to get Lori a new microphone so that she doesn't have to position it that way.
Yeah, I got one of those radio mics, and you got to be like right on it on the side, not like the cool mic that Jeff has and Tyler has, where you talk into the end of the thing, right?
Well, our audience is so
I'm a
supportive.
radio gal. This TV stuff is
yeah.
new.
Well, that's the old days. Welcome to the world of video. And
Yeah,
our
welcome to
audience
the 21st century.
Our audience is so supportive financially. We'll get you a new microphone.
But I
With a
like this microphone. It sounds so good.
Well, we
It's
can
my
have
trusty old radio mic.
we can have the best of both worlds, Lori.
We can. Yes,
Yes.
we can.
I have a face for radio, but you have a face for video.
Oh, I've definitely got a face for radio.
Oh, I don't know about
That's why I never wanted to do this video stuff. But hey, it's what the kids are doing nowadays. So I'm trying to be hip and with it.
All right. So Tyler was a little hesitant to describe the concept in your absence since it originated with you. Why don't you tell us what gave you the idea to do Strange Bedfellows?
Tyler gets it. He totally gets it. That's why I want to host with this guy. The idea of Strange Bedfellows, it's been kind of percolating in my head for a while because I see this populist movement growing. And, you know, I've worked in the mainstream media now for 35 years. And in the last 10 years-ish, they've been trying to divide us. And it's one of the reasons I left the mainstream media. I can't stand to be part of something that's trying to divide people, left and right, you know, Republicans versus Democrats. I think we have a lot more in common, and we agree on a lot more than the media wants us to believe. I think the whole idea is to divide us keep us fighting amongst ourselves over political ideologies, which only makes the people in charge happy when we do that, because we're not coming after them, right? We're not directing our anger where it rightfully belongs. So yeah, I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. I've been a libertarian for 27 years, kind of I guess I would describe myself as a progressive libertarian, but I'm also very conservative in some ways. And so I recently got to know Tyler and Caleb from the Center for Political Innovation, and that's what they do. I mean, they are a socialist group, a communist group, but they also have members who are Trump supporters, people who come from the left, the right. And Tyler, I don't know, how would you describe yourself politically? Where do you fall?
My favorite term here lately is conservative Christian communist. That is
One
the
of
label.
those.
Let
Yeah.
that sink in.
Yeah.
What is that exactly? Well, you're going to find out if you watch Strange Bedfellows, because politics really does make strange bedfellows when you got a guy like Scott Ritter coming out to talk to a bunch of commies at a CPI conference and found himself right at home with people who love him, respect him, adore
But that's
him
always
like
been the
we
case
do.
with Scott. I mean, back in the days of the Iraq War, I mean, he considered himself a conservative, but he
Right.
became a darling of progressives. Of course, they're a bunch of phonies because they were pretending to be anti-war. They really were seizing the opportunity to criticize George W. Bush, and that whole so-called
Right.
movement went away when Obama was elected. But Scott is true to his principles. He hasn't strayed at all.
Right. You know, and that's
Well,
why I love it.
By the way, I'm an issues guy. I'm like you. I'm an issues guy. I don't even like to label myself. Do you label your? I've said this to you before, Scott. You call yourself a conservative, and then I hear your opinions, and many of them sound like what would normally be associated with progressives. So nowadays, do you still call yourselves a progressive as of this moment right now?
I mean, a conservative?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Progressive conservative, maybe?
I think, first of all, there's nothing wrong with conservative.
No, I didn't mean to suggest there is, but
I just think that some people have given it a bad name because they're seeking to redefine it. A conservative is basically somebody. The way I look at it is, here's the Constitution, and a conservative is somebody who operates in a very tight orbit around the Constitution, with very little leeway for interpretation. Sort of a strict, we go with the original intent and things of that nature. But that's okay. Conservatives can also move out just a little bit here and be here. To me, a liberal, there's nothing wrong with this. The liberals way the hell out here. They're spinning around, like Pluto around the sun, way out there, sort of free thinking and all that stuff. And the beauty of it is that this strict interpretation and that loose interpretation, neither one of them are good for everybody. What has to happen is they have to come together, and they have to work out a compromise that to sit down and say, well, if we're going to live together in this thing we call America, we need to come up with, an approach that we can both buy into. So I'm not afraid of being a conservative, because I know that I'm open-minded enough to sit down and listen to other people. And I hope that they're open-minded enough to sit down and listen to me. I have to be honest. No insult meant to any progressives out there. The most closed-minded people in America today are progressives, in my opinion. Way of the highway, pound sand, get out of here. Conservatives are sort of always the ones coming in going, all right, I'm here to listen. And, and then you're a conservative, but I'm here to listen. I'd like to listen to what they have to say. People talk about big tent conservatism, but oftentimes I see they got the big tent out there and there's a handful of conservatives in there waiting for people to show up to participate. Meanwhile, the liberals are out there going, you're an evil conservative. You're an evil conservative. That's just my take on it. And I'm a little jaundiced, Jeff, as you know it. I got burned by the anti-war movement, and I have heart. But again, I went to CPI meetings, and I have to tell you, there ain't anybody more left than them. I
Right.
thought it was the Communist Party International is when I went there. And they listen, they're reasonable, they want to talk about things. And that's the people I want to deal with. I don't really care what your foundational ideology is, because it's going to be different than mine. What I care about is your ability to work with me to find middle ground so that we can keep moving peacefully. Peacefully. That's the whole idea. And if we can master this technique here at home, then we can take it abroad. And it'd be amazing how we could go out. But how the hell do we expect to sit down and have diplomacy with the Russians, the Chinese, and everybody else when we can't even do diplomacy here at home?
Right.
When our country is so polarized. Anyways, I'm stealing your guys' thunder. I apologize for that.
No,
Well,
you're
No,
good.
not at all.
You talk about compromise and finding the middle ground and so forth. I don't know that I exactly disagree with that, but the way I would put it is I think we need intellectual honesty. I think we need to have real debate and discussion where people listen to the reasoning of the other person and they address the reasoning instead of all this like, oh, I must stick to, the party line. It's like so many ordinary people behave as though they're party operatives or something. You know what I mean? Even when I'm like going out to bars or restaurants with my friends, I'm like, take it easy, guys. We're not in the media right now. We're just talking to each other. Let's actually listen to each other. That's what I crave.
And that's what we have in mind. I mean, I want to bring together different guests every week. And sometimes we might not have a guest, and me and Tyler will be talking about things. But, where else can you hear a libertarian and a communist get together and actually have a good conversation about the real issues and finding those points of agreement? It's not supposed to be like a debate show. We're not going to be pow, 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 going at each other at all. That's the opposite of what Strange Bedfellows is all about. We're not doing Hannity and Combs.
Right.
They tried so much
you're
to
aging
divide us
yourself there,
these
Lori.
days.
In other words, it's not contrived. You're not afraid of disagreement, but you're not going to force
No.
it. Yeah,
Exactly.
you'll agree when you agree, and you'll disagree when you disagree. So the two of you see yourselves as strange bedfellows. So
Right.
in that sense, that's how the concept makes sense. But you're also going to bring on guests that are maybe what you wouldn't expect.
Right.
Give us an idea of what sort of guests you have in mind, either specific names or the type of guests that people can expect.
Well, I thought the perfect first guest for our first show next Friday
Can I guess?
night.
Can I guess? I can tell you who I have in mind.
Who? Who?
RFK.
Oh man, that's a tall order. You want me
for
to
it.
get this guy in here in the first show?
Yes.
He's
Yes, I
kind
do.
of busy at the moment.
All right, so I guessed wrong. It's not the one you have in mind. Who do you have in mind?
I do want to get him on the show. I don't know if we can pull it off by next week, but I'll try.
Think big.
I told you I'm going to lose this time slot.
Yeah.
They're going to bring in Tucker Carlson. They're going to bring
Tucker
in
Carlson.
That's it. Let's get Tucker. He needs a job. I don't know if we can afford him.
Who do you have in mind?
I'd like to bring in Caleb Maupin, the founder of CPI.
Okay.
He's someone who I know Scott has a great deal of respect for. And
Yeah, we had him on with us. He was a guest of ours once.
Has he been a guest on this show?
Yeah.
I
You
didn't
don't
know
have to.
that.
You don't have to talk us into endorsing Caleb.
Oh, he's a great guest. Always interesting. And I thought, let's start with a hard left, and we'll bring in the communists and hear what they have to say. And then maybe the week after that, we might bring in a libertarian. I'd like to bring in Dr. Ron Paul, who's the reason I'm a libertarian today. He brought me to the party. Those are a couple of guests I have in mind right off the bat. And of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as well. I think, Kennedy likes you, Scott. I think he would happily come on any show that you are on or stand behind. And what would be really cool is if we could get Kennedy on when you're here. I wouldn't want to do that without you. I mean, I know you were just on his podcast pretty recently. That was a wonderful conversation, by the way. But I'd like to do that when you're back from Russia so you can take part as well.
I'm here to assist in any way possible, especially after you steal my time slot. So
We're stealing
Just
it.
for
No, we're
for
just
a
trying to
minute.
keep the audience entertained while you're away.
It's just the perfect way to introduce this new show, since you're not going to be able to do it anyway at that time. And then we're going to find the right time slot for you guys after Scott comes back. And, we have
Well,
plenty.
we appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was
It's
hoping
not-
you could
These-
join us, Scott,
these,
if you wake up at 3:00 in the morning and you just can't sleep. Dial
Well, you
in
never
and
know. Jet
join us.
lag is a thing. So
Exactly.
maybe if I'm up at 3, I'll log in, contact Jeff, say, hey, want to do something?
Come on. We need you.
Is that, did you actually figure it out? Is that the time when we're on? It's 3 a.m. or something that's close to that, I think.
Yeah,
I know
it's
the folks-
way.
yeah,
Well,
I
remember,
Like 3, 4
Jeff,
in the
Russia's
morning.
very big. In America, we're used to 3 time zones.
how
In
many are there?
Russia, they got like a million.
5? Yeah.
So it's a lot.
All right. Well, so we got a taste of what to expect, and maybe our beloved audience can make some suggestions about
Yes,
some
please.
guests and what they want. So feel
Yeah.
free to let us know.
Yeah.
And the other reason we wanted our new friends to come on is just to take part in wishing you a bon voyage. I told you before the podcast started that I love you, and I'll say it again publicly. And remember, the most important thing is to stay safe. And otherwise, I'm sure it's going to be a great experience. We wish you all the best. And
Amen.
Well, I appreciate it. And now, just so you guys do know that my goal, not to compete with your time slot, Lori and Tyler. I understand it's yours now. But when each city I go into, I'd like, is that a cat?
That is a cat.
That's a
You
large
remember-
cat.
You remember when we did that interview last time when my cat just interrupted and
Yeah,
stole
I
the
got
show?
cats
And she just did it again.
Maverick could interrupt. But anyways, I do plan on periodically doing a short Ask the Inspector because of security. I can't talk about where I'm going, but I can talk about where I've been. And so, for instance, as I finish with City 1, when I settle into City 2, if there's time, I'd like to be able to contact Jeff, and I'd like to be able to do a spur of the moment thing. And again, if we can't get a live audience for it, at least we can capture it and people can watch it later. But a way to keep people informed of how the tour is going and what's happening and what the mood is and things of that nature.
That'd be
So,
awesome.
And I know that the time difference is crazy, but maybe we can tape it a few hours in advance and play it on the show Friday night.
Well, it's not that crazy. It just limits it, but it's not unworkable because Scott in Moscow or wherever in Russia at night is going to be my morning. So, it's
Yeah.
not. It's doable.
Yeah.
The
We'll
other
figure
issue,
it
of
out.
course, is finding a good internet.
Moscow at night, baby. What makes you think I want to be with you?
You'll be downing those shots of vodka with Vladimir or whomever.
Tom's beer, I think it is.
Mm.
You going to bring back some good Russian vodka for us, Scott?
I don't think I'm allowed to.
They won't let you. Huh?
Mm.
I think there's the
Oh,
sanction
that's on the
thing.
embargo list, right?
I'll bring back
Vodka's went
memories
the-
of good Russian vodka.
It's went
Oh,
the way
just
of the
put a little in your
Kalashnikov.
put a little in your toothpaste tube. Nobody will ever know.
Well, now they do, Jeff.
All right. Well,
Yeah, you just gave it away, man.
Give it away.
put it
All
in the
right,
shade.
guys. I got to go to bed because I got to get up early to go to the airport. So
Wow.
All right.
I wish you the
You
best of
rest
luck
up, sir.
with Strange Bedfellows. And Jeff, thank you. The audience,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And thank you. The cat, thank you.
The cat thanks you.
And just again, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a good trip.
I'm so
All
glad
right.
you're going. I hope they don't Snowden you and pull your passport. So
Give me
safe
ideas. Don't
travels.
Give me ideas.
You'll be in good company.
All right.
All right.
You
Thanks,
travel safe,
everybody.
Scott.
We
You're the
love you,
man.
We'll all be in touch, and it won't be as usual, but it'll still be great. Take care, everybody.
We'll hold down the